Hey Kenan, nice to have you here. We were just talking about how PUMA established a privacy-centric global analytics setup. Can you maybe summarize what you were talking about?
Sure. Nice to be here, obviously. My first time in Hamburg as well as the Analytics Summit. In summary, I talked about how we implemented our framework from GA through to GA4. I also talked about our privacy setup, our setup around GA4, how we structured it globally. I also discussed around the setup for GTM, how we changed the GTM setup from different containers to singular ones. I also talked about how we see the future, how reliant it's going to be, and because there could be changes in the future, obviously, into privacy policies or in the GA setup. So we are ready for those as well. Other than that, I think I also discussed how you should be approaching the regions, your different stakeholders, what is supposed to be happening, and how you should be handling any type of problems. I also discussed what is this setup we have in terms of handling the requests coming in from different global teams as well as local teams in the HQ. So overall, I think I kind of gave an overview of the full framework. But when I say framework, it's not just the actual GA4 framework, but more like a global setup. Obviously, the framework for GA4 is one part of it, but there is also stakeholder management, communications, project management, obviously technical problems and solutions. So I think, overall it covered the full journey in that sense for us.
Yeah, to establish such a global framework, I can imagine there are a lot of challenges you guys were facing. Can you maybe give us some details about this?
Yeah, of course. First of all, the challenges were mostly around technical issues. So for instance, in GA4, we didn't have a specific framework, which we established now. So every region had a different setup. Their events or parameters or whatever they are using were different. GTM was also in a similar fashion where there were different containers bundled together for all the regions. So for instance, we have one SFCC container. SFCC is Salesforce Commerce Cloud, where we have Europe, Southeast Asia, and different like Oceania, different regions all together, working together in the same container. So this was a challenge, obviously, because when you have an update to a vendor tag or some other tag, you need to consider all these different complexities in the triggers and then the rules in GTM, things around that. Same goes for the privacy. So we have different privacy regulation levels, I guess. So Europe being the strictest one, and then we have Japan, and then we have Africa. We also set it up for Turkey, for instance. So we don't have obviously the privacy compliance for all the regions right now because some countries still really don't care about that. But when and if they do, we have the setup in place. So it's just plugging in them to OneTrust as well as our GTM setup. Basically technical part was like this. Obviously, the other part was the how we handle things, right? So especially it's about the visibility, accountability, and two-way working, I think. So it's not just about regions asking something from you all the time and then you just do it as they say. So there has to be some, obviously we are in the HQ and as the global team with the expertise, we have the say for those things. So it has to be two-way, It's not fire and forget for the other regions. And then another one is the visibility itself. So for the requests. So for this one, we also created a project in Jira where we keep track of all the regions' requests, all the numbers around the projects, all the hours, as well as type of requests, for instance. So let's say we can just see tag manager requests are more than GA4 requests or from the reports, things like that. So I think in the end, this one, this framework that I mentioned is a result of these challenges and the solutions to it. So when we solved them all together and we put them together, we had the framework. Obviously, I have to point out Treken's help for this one too, especially with the GA4 framework. We worked together for a long time, and then we kind of renewed everything. We compiled it in a meaningful way, and then we enforced it.
Sounds good. And I can imagine like this is being such a huge milestone for you to establish this kind of global setup. And I can imagine that there are other companies that are right at the bottom and want to start as same as you. And you mentioned a couple of things now what to do, but do you have like one maybe best practice or one recommendation or just a few how to start a setup and how to like conquer this?
Yeah, I think I can say 2 or 3 things around that. First one is the framework, as I mentioned. So it could be the GA4 framework if they are, depending on the company's structure, I guess. First one is that framework. So you need to collect the data in the same manner from all your regions, all your countries. Or if it's a single company, then all your departments or all your assets, being a website or an app, it doesn't matter. So first one is the framework. It has to be unified so that you can collect the data in the same fashion, and then reports will also fall in place accordingly. Otherwise, yeah, it's lots of more problems to solve down the road, and you have to start it that way so that you don't have to go back and then do it again. Second one is to, I think, have the collaboration and the communication with the stakeholders and the regions in our case. So it needs to be, I think, transparent. So the Jira project that we created was for this, I think, so that everyone has visibility. So we didn't create that project just for our own, like some corner and then checking what are the requests. So we opened it for everyone. So everyone can request and everyone can see what is going on, the status of a ticket, the discussions and everything. So it's visible. This also gives you and the regions, some flexibility as well, because in this way they also understand you. If there is something going on, it is there. They know that you are busy, and not everything is obviously high priority, even though sometimes the requests come like that, obviously. But so I think the framework is the one. I think the first thing. Second thing is collaboration and the visibility, and two-sided accountability. And third one is keep it together, as I mentioned in my presentation. So once you do this, it's important to keep them as is. You shouldn't let anyone to cut corners. It doesn't matter, who they are. Everyone needs to stick with this, and you have to be the champion for it, obviously, and then keep it that way. You shouldn't just do some changes here and there, because once it starts and then if suddenly you see it's a patchwork and then you are back like 3 years ago. So you should be holding on to that.
Yeah. And when creating the framework, you chose Google Analytics 4 and also chose the Google Stack in general. What made PUMA choose GA4 or Google Analytics in general, or the Google Cloud as well?
Yeah, I think I'm not aware of any other discussions, because I joined recently to PUMA like more than a few months, more than 1 year. But obviously GA4 has lots of advantages, being the integration with different GCP, GMP products. Also, since we were using GA3, it's something that's similar in sense and in usage, even though the interface and methodology is changed, still Google Analytics, so people are a little bit more familiar with it. And then it has GTM as well, so it's also one of the important pieces for us, that it works together seamlessly. So overall, I think it's the ecosystem that we were interested in, and I guess people are used to it as well, from reporting to tagging to the UI and everything. So it still needs some kind of course, some kind of getting used to, because GA3 was so long for in the market. But yeah, overall, I think the ecosystem was what was the reason for us. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. And you mentioned it's your first time in Hamburg, actually. How do you like it? Did you have time for some sightseeing?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have much time, but obviously I was told the weather was horrible. It's always rainy, always cloudy. For my luck, maybe yesterday was great. Today is so far also great. I mean, unfortunately, I am going back tomorrow morning, but once I was off the train, I walked around. So I saw the fountain, Ulster, or
exactly.
I saw the fountain. So it was. I just went, got out of the station, and then I started walking. And then first thing I saw was the lake or the fountain. I was like, and the weather was also great. So it was really nice for me to see. And then I went into the Damtor Park. It was also a nice park, really big one. And then, so these are the things that I could see, only unfortunately, but still it was, I think, really good.
And you
hope
got
to
some
come.
sunshine, that's always nice.
Yeah, so really good.
And it's also your first time at the Analytics Summit. Do you have like something that you learned already today and something that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, it was really nice, obviously, to be here. And it's, I think, like a tradition now, and it's getting bigger and bigger, so I can see the reasons. I think what I liked was around the optimization CRO part. So I think I learned that it should be like a product, right? So I think that's what we are also doing in the analytics part. So it's a similar approach where you need to take things as products now. I think this is the new world order for this thing of for this type of things. And another one is for the Mercedes-Benz. I think they also went through a similar transformation like us, so it was also interesting for me to listen to. But I think it was just more on the GA4 side, not the overall strategy. So these two sessions were the ones that really piqued my interest.
Yeah, sounds really nice. Thank you, Kenan, so much for sharing all your experience with PUMA, and let's enjoy the rest of the day.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.